Are you a woman who is new to dating women? Or are you a queer woman who is re entering the world of dating after a long hiatus? Join Lavender Dating on a 2-day online workshop, January 25th and February 1st, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Central Time on Zoom, where you'll become better prepared to jump into the dating scene. Learn how to navigate dating apps, get clarity on your values, wants, and needs in relationship, learn how to start and end connections, and much, much more. Don't put yourself out there unprepared. Tickets are available on Eventbrite or at lavenderdating.com. That's www.lavenderdating.com. Hey, queer friends and allies. Welcome to Season 6 of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzel.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie Zanzel.
And hi, this is Barbara Rowlandson.
And we're going to talk about everybody's favorite subject today, dating. Are you ready to date? Should you date? How do I date? All those things. And we're going to complete it all within one half an hour.
Oh, well, we must be good.
Yeah, we're good. We're
Covered in half an hour.
Well, we're going to start the conversation around dating. And so the first thing that Barb and I see as women who work with people who are coming out later in life is that women get permission from their husbands to date a woman. And there's a lot of problems with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Barb and I are going to come out as people that thinking about opening up marriages and stuff like that. There's a lot of serious consequences to that a lot of times people do not see when they are first exploring their sexuality. And so we want to talk about that a little bit. And so you're just coming out. You may or may not have ever slept with a woman before. You think you may not be straight. And you may have told your husband, you may not have, but you guys have this conversation. You all have this conversation, which, by the way, I had with my husband, ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, Barb, did you have this conversation? But I knew, did you guys ever have that conversation?
Once, very long before I actually left that marriage, I did sort of float the idea of maybe opening things up, and he shut it down right away.
Okay.
Understandably, we were in a monogamous relationship. That was the agreement between us. And so that's how it stayed. But I think that's a really good point that you raise, Anne Marie, and we do see this all the time, that it's kind of part of this bargaining stage where women want to be able to maintain what they already have in their relationship and the stability of that marriage. But also there's a piece of them that is like dying to explore their sexuality and to try something different.
Well, yeah, it's this inherent longing that actually Chapel Roan writes about it quite
Mm-hmm.
eloquently when she does that song, Good Luck, Babe. If you've
Yes.
not heard that song, please go look it up. But
Mm-hmm.
it says, you wake up next to him in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then at the end, the repeating verse is, you have to stop the world to stop this feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Mm-hmm.
I heard that, I'm like, this is a girl that understands what it's like to be queer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the feeling of wanting to be with another woman, feeling wanting to explore your sexual identity will not go away.
That's
I'm
right.
going to tell you. You can push it away, you can deny it, but it's not going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times we need to go explore that. And we're married. And we have to figure out what the next step is. And so a lot of times people talk about opening up their marriages with their husbands. A lot of times the husbands agree
Hmm.
because it's going to be with a woman,
Right, right. If it was a
and
man, they would totally
totally
shut
not
it down.
agree.
Yeah,
But they're okay that you're going to be with a woman, and there's inherent misogyny in that. But we're talking about dating today. We'll get in, we can talk about that some other time. So, what do we generally see happen, Barb?
well, like I said, it tends to be a bargaining thing, and this is JMO, and I know we can't paint everyone with the same brush, and some people can open their up their marriages successfully. It does happen. However, making the transition from a long-standing monogamous relationship to an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship is very challenging.
Yes.
So I think more often than not, what we see is that it may work in the short term,
Mhm.
and it usually is just a stepping stone to the end of the marriage.
Some things that people don't consider is that you open up your marriage, and both you and your husband are going to have an open relationship, and
Mhm.
your husband might meet somebody
Yeah,
quicker than you and fall for them quicker than you. So a lot of times people don't consider that. Um, People also don't consider you're bringing a whole other personality with their own
yes,
needs, their own thoughts, their own desires into a relationship that normally had been inhabited by just the two of you. Even
sure.
though you think that the girlfriend will be on the side, there's no way that that's not going to affect you in how you view your marriage. Um, Thirdly, a lot of women that are long term out lesbians or out bisexual women hesitate getting in a relationship with somebody who is married, um, because that brings their own heartache to them.
Hmm.
And so there are women that, because they fall for you and like you, will end up getting in a relationship.
Sure.
But I'm just going to say there's also predators out there, whether they're
Hmm.
unknown, like they don't know they're a predator. I'm
Hmm.
not going to say that they all, but the women that are always dating married women.
Yeah.
Yeah, or there's people that like the fact that you're married because it doesn't mean it means that they don't have to give as much as
Hmm.
somebody who is unmarried because you have some of your needs taken care of by your husband.
That's right.
So being thoughtful about opening your marriage, and it's not polyamory if it's the one dick rule. Like,
Yeah.
if he's the only woman person in that relationship that's allowed to have sex, like you can't go, and if you're like going to practice polyamory, you can't go and have a relationship with a man. He's going to be the only male relationship. Then you're
Hmm.
not really practicing polyamory, you know? And so we see it, I see it, and Barb sees it, is that it is part of bargaining, because once we let our spouse know that we are not straight, or we're thinking we may not be straight, and that we want to go out and explore it, what existed between the two of you has been changed already. And what we see it as in the 5 stages of grief, and again, gonna I will get, and we'll do that on another podcast.
Yep.
But in these stages of grief, part of it is bargaining, and you're trying to keep something alive and the same, even though it is already
And it's
inherently changed.
once you let this piece of you out of the box, there's no putting it back in. Like your
Mhm.
relationship will not be the same.
Will not be the same. Yes, exactly. And so there's some questions to ask. If you want to go to explore this, should you tell your spouse? I mean, I have no judgment for people. They can do whatever they want to do, but are you going to tell your spouse about your suspicions that you may not be straight? And so is there, like, also Barb and I are very big on values. So
Mhm.
if not being monogamous with your spouse is one of your values, that value is going to get, your relationship, outside your marriage is going to go up against that value. So if you're somebody who's always seen yourself as very monogamous or very, very faithful to their
Yeah.
partner, and all of a sudden now you're out with another person, those things are going to bring up a lot of confusion. And so, what we're just trying to do is to be really thoughtful before any of us go out and explore this outside of our marriage,
Yeah.
because so many times we've seen it just blow up. And we
Yeah.
just want to save you guys some pain.
Absolutely. I think do yourself a favor and all the other people out in the dating world a favor too by know thyself
Mhm.
before you decide to jump into the dating pool.
Okay.
And I think the point that you raise about values is incredibly important. And in fact, if you've been married for 10, 20, 30 years and your identity is so intertwined with your husband or your partner.
Or you're as being a mom,
E-
and yeah.
exactly. A lot of times, and we see this all the time, and we've experienced this as we just sort of first start to make this transition from our heteronormative lives to our queer lives. A lot of times we're confronted with this um, reality is that we don't really know ourselves
Hmm.
as well as we think we do,
Hmm.
because our identities are so tied up in our marriage, in our roles that we play within our family systems and within society. So when we're finally it's time for us to branch out on our own, and we are confronted with this reality of like, oh, I don't even know what I'm looking for or if this is even what I really want. So you really do, I feel, have a responsibility to yourself to take some time to figure that stuff out. So that might involve like a lot of reflection. It might involve working with a therapist or coach. It might involve a lot of like reading and doing a lot of self-help kind of stuff, or participating in a group of similar people who are going through similar things,
Hmm.
and just giving it some real consideration. Because if you do decide to go out there and put yourself out there as a dater, and you're not really sure about what you want out of all of this, and also what you need,
Hmm.
um, it's bound to fail. It's bound.
So, how do you know if you're ready to date then? So, we're going to put aside the people that are still, trying to figure out their sexuality and all those things like that. And we're going to move on now to people that are no longer in a committed relationship and they're ready to explore the dating world. What's your first piece of advice? Because a
Mhm.
lot of the women that we work with have only dated their husbands.
That's
Like
so
they've
true.
never dated anybody besides their husbands, and they've never dated females before.
Exactly. And that
Yeah.
can seem super scary. The world of dating has changed considerably, likely in the time since you've last dated. A lot of the women we work with, I mean, the last people they've dated were their husbands, and maybe that was in high school or college. And that was before like the world of dating apps. And I know dating can seem so much scarier now because for all the reasons, right? Where,
Right.
interacting with other people on social media and online for security reasons, for reasons of like authenticity. Connection is just different now. And the reality is that most queer people, and especially queer women, the way that we connect is online. It's out of necessity, right? Because our community is smaller than if you were dating in the heteronormative world. So,
Absolutely.
so how do you know? Well, of course, the number one thing we just talked about, and I say, know thyself, know what it is that you want. Um, it's maintaining a sense of like who we are, and also really being strong and grounded in what our values are, what our hopes are for ourselves. I'm famous for the list, right? Barb's famous list of wants, needs, and deal breakers.
Hmm.
Really, really important thing to articulate before you ever download a single dating app. So really give
So,
this a lot of consideration.
so what do you mean by wants, needs, and what's the last one? What's I always ask you this: wants, needs.
No, we've only talked about this 1,000 times, but yes, it's I encourage folks to make a list of things that they would like to have in a partner, and in relationship. These are things that are nice to have, but if it's not present, then that's okay. We can work around that.
So, can you give us some examples?
Well, for example, I might wish to date somebody. This is from my personal list. I might wish to be in a relationship and to date people who are taller than me.
Hmm.
However, that does not mean that people shorter than me are ineligible for, being on my list of potential dating candidates.
Well, that's just a given with me.
Everybody's taller than you.
Everybody's taller than me.
So these are just things that and by the way, for those of you listening might also have the same feeling about, hey, I want to date somebody who's taller than me, and that's a deal breaker. That might be your cutoff, and that's fine. Everybody's wants, needs, and deal breakers are going to be different. They are specific to you. You do not have to explain yourself on any of these points. This is your list, and you have agency over this list.
Well, I'm thinking of one that I share with my wife. I love
Mhm.
people that really love food and are willing to explore food and are excited about it. My wife has the most limited palate of all times, and she knows that. I'm not sharing anything. And so, yeah, would it have been nice to have that? Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's not a deal breaker. It's not even a must have. I'd like to have that, but I don't, and life goes on.
Yes, and life goes on, and maybe you go out with your best friend or,
Yeah, I
somebody else
have
you
actually a
like.
couple of people that I go out with for adventurous food eating because my wife just is no fun. So why bring her if she's not going to be fun? So
There you go. She can stay home and have the craft dinner, and you can
I
go
just
do
when
your
she has
thing.
something else to do, that's when I go and have dinner with people that like to eat at different types of restaurants. Okay,
And
so
that's
then
fine, and maybe she has things that she likes to do without you too. It is fine, and
right,
that works for you guys. That's
right.
okay.
So what's the next thing?
So the next thing is, they really need to have this thing. These are qualities that are like so desirable that I just don't feel like it's going to work without these things. So, for example, I'm a big believer in, and this is for, again, just for me personally, I feel like if I'm going to have a potential partner, they should have at least the same level of education as I do.
Mhm, mhm,
And I believe that education changes you. It expands your critical thinking and the way we navigate the world and how we think about the world. And so I want somebody to be who is able to meet me where I am at, when
mhm,
it comes to, education and intelligence and just the ability to have certain kinds of conversations. So that's important to me. So I'm not going to consider dating anybody who doesn't have that level of education.
mhm.
And to some of you, that might sound really snobby. That's okay. Your limit for that is different than mine. That's
See,
totally fine.
that's I'm with the camp that's like boy Barb. That's
And
but
that's
I
perfectly
love you,
fine.
and I also know where it's coming from. And
Mhm,
when you're looking on a dating app, you have to use it. Okay, so this is where it's different than in the real world.
mhm,
Barb could meet somebody in the real world, talk to them for 2 or 3 hours, and they're just fascinating and interesting and have so much life experience and just have so are just so articulate and well educated, and then she finds out they have a high school degree and has never gone on beyond that. But
mhm,
because she's met them in person, she's able to ascertain like how intelligent they are and stuff like that, and
mhm.
their life experiences. But when you think about dating apps, you have to use some sort of parameter.
You do.
And so it's not that Barb's not going to date anybody that's, like has just a high school education. It's just that as she puts parameters on this dating app before she's gotten to meet or talk to somebody,
Mhm.
she's just putting parameters, right?
Yeah, I think, especially like dating apps are for they're like a filter,
Like
like they're a
filter.
giant
Yeah,
sieve,
they're a
right?
filter. Yeah.
So, and by the way, I don't mean to imply that people who have higher education aren't necessarily occasionally intensely stupid, because sometimes they are.
Yes, they are.
But you're right. You do have to have some kind of parameter to filter, and I think that is a logical choice. If you're looking
Mhm.
for someone who's able to sort of go to toe with you intellectually, that they have a similar level of education as you do.
Right,
That
right,
that for me makes sense. So,
right.
so that would be an example from they need to have a job, for
Yeah.
example.
I'm gonna, yeah, that's important, especially in our age range. I think if you're younger, maybe that's not going to be a parameter you have. I mean, younger, we mean somebody late teens, early 20s.
Well,
For somebody in our age range, and anybody that's even 20 to 30 years younger than us,
mhm.
that's often a very important thing. Right.
Well, and I think of it in the other direction too, where I don't think I would now, I will put a caveat in that on this one. I personally don't think I would choose to date somebody who is retired.
Hmm.
Now, having said that, I understand that many retired people are intensely busy and they
Hmm.
find things to fill their day. But for the most part, retired folks have more time
Freedom.
in their hands. They have freedom. They have usually, a source of income that allows them to have some freedom within their lives to sort of just do what they want to do. And I'm a person who's not only working, but going to school. I think a retired person would find me incredibly frustrating to date.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Um, how do you separate? Um, so it's wants, needs, non-negotiables, correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
How do you celebrate a need from a non-negotiable?
I think a need is something that helps align your lifestyles. A non negotiable is a little bit more about character and values.
Okay,
So for me, the non negotiables would be things like,
I
uh,
have.
okay, yes, let's hear it.
Okay, so my non-negotiable, I have to have somebody who is a feminist.
Yes.
I have to be with somebody who is not a racist.
Hmm.
I also have to be somebody that votes progressively.
Yeah.
That is a non-negotiable with me. I was married to someone who was not like that.
Right.
It caused me so much frustration and caused me to question, like, and when I say married, I was talking about my ex-husband,
Hmm.
caused me to question all the time of why am I here? This person and
Hmm.
I don't view the world the same way.
Hmm.
And so to me, those are non-negotiables. Those are like, these are things I value. And I value also honesty. I value, these are things I value.
Yeah.
While, nice, I always get these confused needs. For me, um, I don't know. I like, for me, my non-negotiables are my needs, because I'm thinking like, I can't be with
Mhm.
somebody who's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
That's like a non-negotiable for
Yeah.
me. But I can be with somebody who drinks as long as it's not out of control. And-
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think like needs are a little bit more of like how do our lifestyles align? Who are you on a day-to-day basis? Where non-negotiables are really more about um I want to say like yeah, the character of the person,
Well, and I
the
think also
integrity of the
too,
person.
like, your non-negotiable, what might be a non-negotiable for you may not be one for me and Barb.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
for example, a lot of people, when they're just starting out dating in the queer world, don't want to date anybody a half an hour or more than a half an hour.
Good luck. Good luck,
We're
babe.
like, good, we're not going to look at that. But we know, Barb and I, as people who've been out for a while, know that being in a long distance relationship would have been maybe a non negotiable in the beginning,
Hmm.
so it was part of, but now it's nice to have. You would prefer that need, you would
Hmm.
prefer someone closer.
Hmm.
but it's not a non-negotiable if they live further away than what you would want them. So I think that, like, I think needs is more about non-negotiables, like values, things that like you needs. On the other hand, it'd be nice, like it would be nice that the person that no, it's not nice. You would like somebody that had a education, a certain level of
Yep.
education, but it's not a non-negotiable.
The needs column is changeable. The non-negotiables is not usually.
Okay. Okay.
Because we change.
Right.
We change. And it is, by the way, it is okay if this list change. If you, I encourage people, review your list after 6 months or a year. Does everything on the list still resonate with you? Are things
Mhm.
that there things that you want to cross off? Because what I needed when I was 25 is different than what I needed when I was 50.
Well, how about what
Right?
you needed when you first came out versus now?
Absolutely. So we're supposed to change. We are evolving creatures, right? So your needs will change, and that's okay, so long as you are not changing the things in that column in reference to a specific person other than yourself,
Okay.
right? So we might meet somebody and they just they tick every single box on your list, but there is something missing, and we'd decide, oh, you know what? She's so wonderful. I think I'm just going to try anyway because I know that they're missing one of my need to have, or they've got something on my non-negotiables list, but every other thing about them is fantastic. Well, guess what? You made that list for a reason, and those reasons aren't really going away. So if you're going to change it based on one person who you're interested in, I guarantee you it's not going to work. The only person who can change it for is you,
Hmm.
right?
So you're talking about then people who, so if it's a non-negotiable and that person has that non, so let's use something really simple,
Sure.
like somebody who,
Like,
so somebody who's a very conservative Republican,
mm-hmm,
and but everything else checks the box.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you have said, like I said, I can't date somebody who's conservative politically.
Yep.
Okay. So, and then she checks all the boxes, but she wouldn't for me. But anyway, but she checks all the
It
boxes.
might work for a while.
Hmm.
There might be things about the relationship that work for a while. Maybe initially things are just fantastic and rosy and the sex is great, and you're really enjoying yourselves. And then when you get to run into a bump in the road that has to do something to do directly with that value that's missing or incongruent, it's going to blow up because
Hmm.
they this is who they are and this is who you are. It's like I give the example of I from my personal life. I had dated somebody who I initially said I wouldn't date anybody who with kids younger than mine, and I did do that because she was wonderful in many ways, and it worked for a period of time until it didn't. Well, what I should have done was listen to past Barb, who was doing this favor for future Barb by making this list, right? And I really just encourage you to, anybody who's listening, make your list before you ever start dating. It's only in reference to what it is that you want, and you might feel a little afraid too that it's limiting. I want to reassure you that that's okay. That's okay. Yes, it is limiting because you're looking to invite people in who are a good match for you.
Hmm.
Do you
Hmm.
really want to? How many frogs do you really want to kiss here?
Right. Absolutely. There's a reason why it's limiting,
Yeah,
because you want to limit it to you.
yeah. Now, we should just say all of what we're talking about here is if you're looking for a relationship with an ongoing.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Barb. This is really about if you're looking for that special someone that you want to spend
Yes.
the rest of your life. Now, next week, we're going to talk about dating when you're just wanting to have fun. And so Barb's going to give you some advice on that. But if you are like really intrigued about this And whether you are starting to date, thinking about dating, maybe in a relationship already, Barb has got a fabulous workshop coming up the last Saturday of January and the first week of February. So the 2 Saturdays, January 25th, February 1st, they're from 1 to 2:30 p.m. And it is Women Loving Women Online and Dating Workshop. And in that workshop, she is going to define values, help you find clarity, write a compelling dating app, the ins and outs of online dating. You're going to learn how to keep a conversation going, which can be hard, and how to gracefully and calmly end a connection, as among other things. So if you want to join this workshop and get more of Barb's wisdom, whether you're starting to date or maybe it's on the forecast for this year and you haven't even thought about how you're going to do this, this is really good, solid advice. And we have learned from our clients. And so they have taught us about the dating world. And we've also had our own experiences in the dating world. So we would love for you to join that workshop and come back for part 2 of this conversation next week. We would love to see you again. And before next week, make that list. What are your
nice to have wants, your needs, and your deal breakers?
All right. And if you want to talk to us about that, please reach out to us on social media. Barb is posting all the time about lavender dating, so let her know some of the things that you're thinking about. Or you can sign up for the workshop. Just go to my website, annemariezanzel.com, and there's a nice big banner at the head of the top of the website. You just click on it and you can go and sign up. We would love to talk to you about this and hear your questions and hear your thoughts. So join us for our workshop coming up in a couple of weeks. All right. Part 2 of our dating is next week.
I'm really looking forward to it. The workshop's going to be so much fun, you guys. So jump in if you can. And if you can't, tune in for the part 2 of this conversation next week.
Thanks, Barb.
All right.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzel. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzel.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzel.com.